Director Irvin Kershner shot deleted scenes showing Murphy's complete psychological breakdown, footage deemed too disturbing for test audiences. The theatrical version is actually the third complete edit. These are the 20 hidden details in Robocop 2 you completely missed. Number 20. The failed Robocop 2 prototypes weren't miniatures or early CGI experiments, but full-scale practical puppets, costing $45,000 each to construct. Phil Tippett's Creature Shop built every malfunctioning cyborg design as functional animatronics with real hydraulic systems. Production records show each prototype required 6 weeks of fabrication time and specialized mechanics. Tippett's crew literally demolished the expensive puppets on camera with no second chances or digital safety nets. The twitching, sparking death throes weren't special effects added later, but actual hydraulics malfunctioning on cue. Choreographed by technicians who spent months programming the breakdown sequences, CGI was pitched by Industrial Light and Magic as a cheaper alternative but rejected by Kershner as too expensive and untested for 1989 technology. Number 19. Tom Noonan's chilling performance as cult leader Cain almost never happened because Orion Pictures wanted Billy Idol for the role. Studio executives saw Idol's punk aesthetic as perfect for the Substance Kingpin character and offered him the part in January 1989. Then Idol's motorcycle accident 2 weeks before principal photography eliminated him from consideration. Noonan got the role just 72 hours before his first scene. Noonan told Entertainment Weekly in 1990 that he invented the religious angle on set because there wasn't time to develop the character properly. His decision to play Cain as a twisted savior rather than standard villain came from desperation, not the script. Kershner later admitted in DVD commentary that Noonan's interpretation saved the character from being forgettable. Number 18. The blue liquid substance called Nuke wasn't a prop department invention, but actual industrial cleaning fluid dyed for cameras. Production designer Peter Jameson hired Randy Jurgensen, a DEA consultant who brought real crack house documentation to the Detroit set in early 1989. The props department copied exact specifications from federal evidence photographs. Background extras in those sequences weren't all actors either. Several were former addicts hired through Detroit Recovery Project Incorporated, giving authentic body language to withdrawal scenes. Kershner's production notes reveal he wanted documentary realism in the Nuke sequences, overruling studio requests for sanitized versions that wouldn't upset suburban audiences. The authenticity shows in every frame of those uncomfortable sequences. Number 17. Gabriel Damon was only 13 years old playing the ruthless kid gangster Hob, creating massive legal complications on set. California child labor laws required Damon's parents present every take, with strict time limits on working hours enforced by state monitors. The original scripted death scene showed Hobbs' body graphically torn apart by bullets. That's because the MPAA forced 3 complete reshoots before approving the sequence for an R rating. Studio executives at Orion actually tried cutting Hobbs' character entirely after test screenings showed audiences uncomfortable with child violence. Kershner fought to preserve the role, arguing in production memos that removing Hobb would eliminate the film's commentary on youth exploitation in Detroit's illegal trade. Number 16. Production shut down completely for 11 days when Orion Pictures' mounting financial crisis hit the Robocop 2 set. The studio was hemorrhaging money across multiple productions and couldn't meet payroll obligations. Crew members worked 2 full weeks without paychecks, surviving on personal savings while executives scrambled for emergency financing from MGM and other partners. The original script called for a massive climactic battle inside a packed football stadium. That wasn't a creative choice, but desperate cost-cutting after the production pause. The scenes required thousands of extras, complex logistics, and location fees, but Orion Pictures couldn't afford the expenses. Peter Jameson's notes reveal the crew had already built partial stadium sets before abandoning them. Number 15. Peter Weller's nightmare with the Robocop suit returned worse than the first film because the Robocop original suit was completely destroyed after 1987 production. Costume designer Rosanna Norton had to build an entirely new suit from scratch, but the specifications were lost and the new version didn't fit Weller's body properly. Watch Weller's movement in Robocop 2 and it's noticeably stiffer than the first film. That's not acting choice but genuine physical agony from a poorly fitted costume causing severe back pain. Weller was hospitalized twice during the 4-month shoot for back complications at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in production. Reports indicate stunt doubles were used in 40% more scenes than originally planned because Weller physically couldn't perform basic movements. His interviews from 1990 reveal he seriously considered quitting mid-production. production. Number 14. Frank Miller attended every single day of shooting uninvited, creating escalating tension with Irvin Kershner throughout production at Michigan Motion Picture Studios. Miller believed his screenwriter credit entitled him to set access and creative input on all decisions. Kershner banned Miller from the set after 3 weeks, but he ignored the order and kept showing up anyway. Crew members reported seeing Miller rewrite dialogue, then secretly hand the changes to actors. You can spot dialogue that feels inconsistent with the rest of the script. Those were Miller's unauthorized additions that confused actors who didn't know which version to perform. Studio executives at Orion ultimately sided with Kershner and issued a formal letter in April 1989 instructing Miller to stop visiting. Number 13. The mayor assassination scene was filmed inside Detroit's actual city hall without proper permits from the municipal government. Willard Pugh's death scene required access to the real mayor's office, which production secured through local government connections and location manager Tom Rolfe. Midway through filming, the location permit was suddenly revoked after city officials realized the violent content being shot in their government building. Production assistants documented the crew being physically evacuated by Detroit police mid-take. Notice several uniformed officers who aren't extras. Those are real Detroit cops who showed up to remove the film crew. Kershner ordered his team to keep filming, completing the sequence guerrilla style without permission, while actual law enforcement tried to shut them down. The resulting footage contains genuine tension. Number 12. Belinda Bauer's character, the OCP psychologist, was originally written as male in Frank Miller's script submitted to Orion in late 1988. The gender swap happened 48 hours before Bauer's first shooting day, giving her virtually no preparation time to develop the character. Production notes reveal Orion executives made the last-minute change hoping to add romantic tension, a subplot Miller never intended. Bauer's wardrobe wasn't custom designed, but rental pieces borrowed from other productions shooting simultaneously at the studio lot. Watch her costumes across different scenes, and you'll notice inconsistent styling. That's because Rosanna Norton was literally grabbing whatever was available each morning. The entire psychologist subplot was cut from early test screening versions after audiences showed no interest in Murphy's therapy sessions at all. Number 11. The Substance Factory raid was filmed in an abandoned Packard automotive plant literally scheduled for demolition the following month by Detroit city contractors. Production paid exactly $1 to use the location for 1 week, documented in Orion's accounting records submitted to auditors. 3 days into filming, construction inspectors discovered dangerous asbestos throughout the building. The entire set was evacuated mid-shoot and filming suspended pending environmental safety clearance from Michigan state authorities. Watch the final explosion sequence at the factory's climax. That's not special effects pyrotechnics, but the actual building demolition captured on film by Jan de Bont. Rather than constructing explosive charges and carefully choreographing destruction, Kershner simply positioned cameras around the scheduled demolition and filmed the real thing. Number 10. Phil Tippett animated the Robocop 2 creature for 14 hours daily across 6 months at his Berkeley studio, creating the film's most labor-intensive element. The stop-motion model kept breaking during the painstaking animation process, with visible repairs appearing in the final theatrical cut approved by Orion. Look closely at the creature's shoulder joints during the climactic battle, and you'll spot inconsistencies in the metal plating between shots. Those are actual damage to the model that Tippett's team couldn't fully repair before continuing animation work. CGI was seriously pitched as an alternative by effects teams at Industrial Light and Magic, but the technology was rejected as both too expensive and too unreliable for 1989 standards. The final creature fight sequence represents approximately 8 months of total animation work. Number 9. Nancy Allen's character Lewis had an entire subplot removed, drastically reducing her screen time from the original cut assembled by editor Armin Manasian. Allen's contract with Orion guaranteed specific minimum screen time and billing prominence negotiated by her agent before production. When test audiences responded negatively to Lewis's personal life scenes, the studio cut them and paid Allen contractual penalties rather than keeping footage audiences disliked. 3 complete deleted scenes showed Lewis's relationships outside the police force, her home life, and romantic complications unrelated to Murphy. These sequences exist in Orion's vault, but have never been officially released on any home video format. Test audience comment cards preserved in studio archives reveal male viewers didn't care about the female cop's problems at home, leading to the drastic cuts. Number 8. The surgeon massacre scene originally ran 4 minutes longer with graphic surgical detail the MPAA found unacceptable for theatrical release. Watch the theatrical version and notice the jarring quick cuts during the operating room sequence filmed at Detroit's abandoned Grace Hospital. Those edits weren't stylistic choices by editor Manasian, but mandatory removals of excessive surgical violence. Orion submitted 9 separate edits to the MPAA ratings board before finally receiving R rating approval from Richard Hefner's classification team. Each rejection came with specific frame-by-frame notes detailing exactly which shots exceeded acceptable violence levels for mainstream audiences. The European theatrical version contains the full uncut sequence, adding back surgical close-ups and extended suffering that American audiences never saw. Kershner fought the cuts, arguing the violence served the story's commentary. Number 7, the bizarre baby food commercial was supposed to be cut after the first test screening showed audiences confused by its tonal clash with surrounding scenes. Orion executives unexpectedly loved the commercial parody and demanded it stay in the final cut despite interrupting the film's momentum. The entire sequence was shot in a single afternoon by director of photography Jan de Bont using props literally borrowed from a nearby Detroit grocery store. Jameson's crew didn't have the budget for custom baby food jars, so they removed labels from Gerber products and created new packaging. Notice the generic product design looks rushed because it was assembled in hours. The scene became a cult favorite among fans who appreciated its satirical edge, but test audiences originally found it jarring. Number 6, the OCP tower establishing shots showing Detroit's skyline aren't location footage but hand-painted miniature matte paintings created by artist Rocco Joffre. The actual building photographed was Houston's Pennzoil Place, shot separately by second unit director Peter McDonald and composited into Detroit backgrounds. Matte artist Joffre worked from black and white reference photographs because color images weren't available for the Houston location during pre-production. Watch those skyline shots and notice slight color inconsistencies between the tower and surrounding buildings. That's because Joffre was essentially guessing at accurate colors based on architectural descriptions and lighting theory. Each composite establishing shot required 6 weeks of painstaking frame-by-frame work to complete at Joffre's studio. The technique was standard for 1989 filmmaking, but feels noticeably artificial when viewed on modern high-definition displays. Number 5, the film's ending was completely rewritten during the editing process after test screenings showed audiences wanted heroic resolution instead of psychological damage explored in Frank Miller's script. Miller's original ending had Murphy permanently damaged psychologically, unable to fully integrate his human memories with his machine programming systems. Studio executives demanded a heroic resolution after negative test scores indicated audiences found the dark ending depressing and unsatisfying. The final confrontation was reshot 4 months after principal photography, wrapped in late 1989 at a different Detroit location. Watch Peter Weller carefully and you'll notice visible weight gain compared to earlier footage. The costume department added padding to disguise the physical changes, but Weller's face looks noticeably fuller. Production record shows the expensive reshoot pushed the budget higher. Number 4, Irvin Kershner submitted his 145-minute director's cut to Orion Pictures in October 1989, and the studio immediately rejected it as too long and too dark for audiences. The studio re-edited the film without Kershner's approval or consultation, cutting 35 minutes and restructuring sequences to emphasize action over psychological complexity Miller had written. Kershner was contractually powerless to stop the changes and publicly distanced himself from the theatrical version released by Orion. He didn't actually watch the released cut until 1994, 5 years after the film's premiere at Mann's Chinese Theater. His DVD commentary recorded years later includes the stark admission saying, "The theatrical version is not my film." Watch the pacing of Robocop 2 and notice how abruptly scenes transition without proper emotional beats. Number 3, Tom Noonan's brain and jar prop was created using a life cast of the actor's actual head, making the disembodied brain disturbingly realistic for audiences. Noonan had to lie horizontal for hours during voice recording sessions to achieve the proper muffled sound quality of a brain speaking through artificial systems. The prop itself cost $18,000 to construct, more than several supporting actors' total salaries for the entire production period. Watch Cain's scenes as the Robocop 2 creature, and that's genuinely Noonan's facial features sculpted onto the brain casing by Bart Mixon. The expensive prop was purchased at an Orion Pictures bankruptcy auction in 1991 from a private collector's possession when the studio liquidated assets to pay creditors. Peter Caron called it the most expensive piece. Number 2, composer Basil Polidorus, who created the iconic original Robocop score, was replaced with Leonard Rosenman for the sequel despite fan expectations and Polidorus' interest in returning. Polidorus actually composed demo tracks for Robocop 2, but Orion rejected them as too similar to the first film's musical themes. Rosenman was hired to create a completely different musical identity and given just 3 weeks to score the entire film, the shortest composition schedule of his career working in Hollywood. The rush is audible in the final product mixed at Todd A.O. Studios. The music feels less cohesive and memorable than the original score because Rosenman literally didn't have time to develop recurring themes. Budget cuts forced the music to be recorded with a smaller orchestra than the first film used at various sessions. Number 1, Robocop 2 underperformed drastically at the box office, earning making $45 million domestically against a $53 million production budget reported by Variety. The financial disappointment triggered immediate panic at Orion Pictures, which was already struggling with bankruptcy proceedings and creditor pressure. Rather than accepting the loss, executives immediately greenlit Robocop 3 in a desperate attempt to recoup losses through franchise continuation and merchandising deals. The second film's failure directly caused the franchise's quality decline as budgets shrank and creative ambition disappeared entirely. Orion filed for bankruptcy in 1991, killing plans for Frank Miller's proposed darker sequel concepts he had pitched. The studio's financial collapse meant Robocop 3 was produced under completely different circumstances with minimal resources at Carolco Pictures. Watch the theatrical cut knowing the entire franchise's trajectory changed forever. Robocop 2 reflects hundreds of quiet creative decisions involving Miller's darker vision, stop-motion creature effects, and satirical corporate excess that push boundaries beyond the original. Studio compromises shaped what survived, yet the film's ambition remains visible in its boldest moments. Which hidden detail surprised you most? And what film should we open next?